Hi. So let's go into our third family oriented awareness talk about Bach remedies. Today I want to focus only upon children. Our children come to us with a very sacred contract. Their souls ask our souls to nurture their divine potential, to provide to them the environment that they need to function as their soul essence and to proceed on their very individual soul journeys. Their souls entrust us with a sacred responsibility of nurturing our children, of accepting them exactly as they are, and most importantly, not judging them for who they are, for what they do. Our tasks as parents, as caregivers, as nurturers, and teachers is to provide for them a structure that is not suffocating, that is not limiting, but which holds them in a safe space while they experiment with their paths, with their decisions, and with their choices. In no way must this structure attempt to make our children a clone of who we are. Because if we do that, we do not allow humanity to move forward. In fact, by our actions, we are choosing that humanity should stay still and stagnant or even regress and move backwards. Our children are our children, but they are the children of the universe first and foremost. And as the creation of the universe, they have a divine responsibility to take our world forward. In doing this, they sometimes face their own challenges, their own hurdles, just as you and I face. And today's talk is how we can use Bach flower remedies to help our children to move forward upon their soul journeys, to realize their divine potentials, and to help them move away from their own self-inflicted hurdles or from hurdles that society around them has put upon them. So we'll discuss a whole lot of topics today, like learning disabilities, fears, angers, and more. Of course, I cannot in this short period of time discuss everything and all situations, but I shall certainly try to help you to help your child. So let's start with change. You know as well as I do that even as adults, we find change sometimes very challenging. And think of the many changes that our children have to face. Very often they face changes in the school environment, or they may change the school itself and therefore they have to adjust to a new set of friends. Sometimes there are challenging changes in the family environment. We have seen a number of times where joint families split up into nuclear family structures, but the children have a very hard time leaving behind their grandparents or their cousins or other relatives who they might have been very close to. Children also face many changes in themselves. as they move from infancy to being toddlers, to being young children, adolescents, teenagers, and young adults. Every phase of their life brings a different challenge. In order to help them face changes without being agitated or disturbed by these changes, a Bach flower remedy that they could use is walnut. Sometimes children are extremely resistant to making any changes in themselves, even when they know that that particular change is actually very good for them. They get set in their ways, and in spite of repeated attempts to make them understand, they follow the same patterns. They make the same mistakes, they say sorry, but they go back to their same behaviors and attitudes. When you face a child who is resistant to change and who, for whatever reason, and it could really be even fear, but for whatever reason is resisting the change, then along with the walnut, you could add chestnut bud. If you think that the child is resisting the change because the child is willful or just very stubborn, then to walnut and chestnut you could add vervain. If the child is resisting change because of anxiety and fear, then to the walnut and chestnut you could add mimulus. If external changes in weather constantly make your child ill, for example, if it is raining, your child might instantly get a cold or a cough. If there is heat and acute sunlight, your child might get a sunstroke. If you find that weather conditions are really troubling your child incessantly, then along with walnut and chestnut, you could try to add beech. Please understand that this change remedy needs to be taken for a consistently long amount of time so that the inner system, which resists change, which cannot handle change very well, is then gradually changing itself so that it can become a more adaptable and flexible inner environment. Now let's move on to learning disabilities. I have been a teacher of over 32 years. And in the course of these many long years of experience, I have found that children are experiencing learning disabilities which are now being recognized, fortunately. I have also found that these so-called learning disabilities are not really disabilities at all. They are just children with a completely new, evolved energy system who are finding it difficult to find their way through our sometimes very limiting education system. Our education system looks at our children only as numbers and names in a register. They do not recognize them as individual souls with different talents, different skills, and different potentials. Everyone is generalized as, let us say, a standard 6 student or a grade 8 student without any recognition of who the child really is. In fact, it is because of this that we label our children as having learning disabilities. If you find that your child is unable to cope in school or college due to any kind of these challenges that the environment is putting up, then you could help the child with Bach flower remedies. Many of the parents who come to me with children who have been diagnosed with learning disabilities will also complain that the child lacks focus and concentration. please understand that this is because the child's creative mind is moving very, very fast. In order to help the child to calm down and to give them more focus and more concentration, I generally prescribe a formula of 3 remedies, and that is white chestnut, clematis, and impatiens. This helps the child to be less restless in both mind and spirit, and gives them the patience to sit down and concentrate upon a given task. Due to the school environment, and very, very often due to a rather harsh and unkind, insensitive family environment, the child's real difficulties and challenges are not understood. So the child begins to feel scared and loses confidence in himself or herself, starts believing that I do not have it in me to be a good student. I do not have it in me to succeed. This is a very sad fall in the child's self-confidence and self-esteem. For this, along with the white chestnut and the clematis and the impatiens, I recommend that you give the child larch and gentian and also mimulus. This will help the child to gain self-confidence and to face whatever fears the child is facing in a brave and courageous manner. There are children who are not happy to interact with others. Very often this stems from a lack of self-confidence and a lack of self-worth. And they keep themselves aloof. They don't want to interact with either their own peer group, or they may not want to interact with their parents, with their families, with their siblings. And they generally keep to themselves without the required social interaction. Social interaction is extremely important for every child. It builds up the ability to cooperate with others, to work with others. We have to inculcate in our children this firm cosmic truth that has actually become a cliche now, but is so true, that no man is an island. We need others, and we have to appreciate that we are very significant in the lives of others as well. Independence is fabulous and needed, but we also have to learn to communicate and live with others in a harmonious manner. In order to help the child who might be reclusive or who might be very, very shy, you could try a combination of mimulus, larch, and water violet. Again, please remember, like the other formulae, this one also has to be given for a consistently long time for it to work in a complete and holistic manner. Teenage years can be tough. They're definitely tough for the teenager, but they can also be very tough for the parents and the families. Teenagers are going through so many physical, emotional, hormonal changes. They don't even really know what kind of changes they're going through, and therefore they can't put it into words. They tend to become reclusive. Some of them tend to become rebellious. Some of them begin to think we know it all and do not want to listen to the voice of reason and experience. And that's all par for the course. Your child and your teenager is not a bad teenager just because your teenager has suddenly become rebellious. I certainly remember my years as a very, very rebellious teenager, and had my parents not understood the phase that I was in, I think I would have probably turned out to be an extremely angry and a person who really would not have liked people. But my parents gave me the space to be this angry, rebellious teenager. And that actually gave me the permission to experience my feelings as well as to let them go, because I wished to let them go as I aged and as I matured. So, as parents, yes, it does become difficult, but let's give our children the freedom to even experience the anger and rebelliousness of teenagers. But if you find that your teenager is suffering from huge angst and is not a happy person most of the time, then yes, Bach flower remedies could definitely help. For the anger that the teenager feels, you can try wine and vervain, and adding beech to it will help because the teenager will become more tolerant. Sometimes teenagers, due to body shaming, due to comparing themselves with X, Y, and Z, don't feel good about themselves and they become very self critical. They negate who they are. For that kind of teenager, crab apple is very, very essential. For a teenager who is harsh, who is bitter, who seems resentful, you must definitely use holly. It helps the teenager to love themselves and to love others and to work in harmony with everyone else and forgive themselves and forgive others for the mistakes that human beings make. If you find that your child is being bullied and does not know how to stand up for himself or herself, then do try this Bach flower remedy formula. To the Bach flower remedy Mimulus, you can add Serato and Centauri. And along with that, add larch and gorse. This combination helps them to find their own inner strength and to stand up to such bullying. Of course, we as adults have to ensure that we do not permit our children to face such bullying without speaking up when and if we need to. Interference from a parent for every little thing, in fact, makes the child even more scared of the kind of reaction that the child will get in school. But if it reaches a level where the child is being traumatized, then of course we as parents and caregivers have to speak up. If a child goes through a very bad bruise or an accident or there is a trauma, then for that period of time, give the child Star of Bethlehem and rescue remedy. I hope this short video will help you and your child. Nurturing our children is, I think, one of the best gifts that the divine gives us. So let's nurture them. Let's nurture their spirits. Let's nurture their potentials. And through it all, let us remember that they are our children, but they are not our clones. And so let us give them the freedom to flower in exactly the way that their soul directs them to. Remember, we are only the guardians of their soul. We do not have the permission to direct their lives. Big hug to you and big hug to your child.